try not to dwell too much on black history. I used to a lot, but black future is my thing at the present time. I'm more inclined to find out what the politicians are going to do as far as the black people is concerned in Scott County. Right at this present time, they haven't done anything. There is no black people working in the courthouse. There's none in the city hall, although they promise these things when they get into office. And up and down Main Street, there's no black people working in none of these stores. And I think there's something wrong. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1865, I believe it was. Things hadn't changed that much. It's still, our minds are still enslaved, although our bodies are free. And that's the only difference.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question about, as a child, parents will pass on information about what they know. Oral histories is what they refer to that. Do you recall things that your parents passed on to you about what they were faced with, or what history that was shared with them, with their roots, with where they came from?
Yes, my father's uncle, Uncle Bud McIntyre, Bud Haley McIntyre, he used to sit us down and talk about our family tree. Mm-hmm. And he used to refer to Richard Johnson as Colonel Dick Johnson. That's what they called him back then. And he used to tell us that Colonel Dick Johnson was our forefather. And gee, I don't have any notes with me, but I could run it all the way back. And see, on the black side of your family, you can only go back so far, because they used to sell slaves down the road, like they sold corn or whatever. And you may have a family broken up just overnight, and you never see them again. And I think this is one reason why you don't see black people showing a lot of affection, because I think this is a drawback from slavery. They were afraid to get too close to each other, because tomorrow you may be sold down the river. Mm-hmm. And so this is one reason why you don't see a lot of open affection among black people.
What do you see what the potential is for change, and what would you like to see change?
Well, I can see some changes at the present time coming. For the fact of it is that by Toyota coming to Scott County, and I think one of the key things to it is education. See, a brick ain't gonna knock that wall down, but an education will kick a hole in it. And so once these doors are open to us, I think we just have to step in. The doors were open for a while, but we let them close again with the help of Ronald Reagan. And he don't seem to think there has ever been any problems. But I think with the new industry coming to town, and with a new minority coming in, and I think we will be able to accomplish some of the things that we haven't been able to accomplish down through the years. And I think the doors will be open. And like I say, I think education is the key to it. And we've got more kids now on the way to school and going to school. But there's one thing, this Proposition 48 is going to knock a lot of our athletes out of school. This is good. Proposition 48 states that a kid has to have a certain grade level in order to get into school. Okay, this means that our kids will study, and they will have to study, and they will study in order to get into school. Then after we overcome Proposition 48, then they'll throw another roadblock in a way, which I don't know what it'll be, but there will be another roadblock. But I think we are on our way, and I think Georgetown as a whole, if we start block voting again like we used to, I think that Georgetown will grow. And there's a lot of good people here in town. There's a lot of good people, white and black. And so I think what we have to do is just get together and discuss these problems. And I think some of the city fathers, you take the mayor, young Tom Prather. I think he's one of the better young mayors that we've ever had. He's got some young ideas. And I think that he's not a bigot in no way. And I've been knowing him ever since he was a kid. And so I think that he will see the things move along pretty smooth. And I'm hoping that he'll get reelected again in this next election. And we also have some pretty decent thinking city fathers, although they haven't hired anyone in the City Hall yet, but nevertheless, I think we have some real decent city fathers here in Georgetown.
Mr. McIntyre, what can you tell us about the city park we're standing in, this water and this log cabin?
Well, now this is one of the oldest springs and one of the best springs in the state of Kentucky. This spring has never gone dry. A lot of the other counties, during some of the hot weather, their spring dries up, but this one never dries up. And this is where really Georgetown begun, is right here. There used to be a fort sitting back up on the hill here. And this is where Georgetown first begun, right here on this spot. And this old cabin is one of the first houses in Georgetown. And so they have preserved it pretty decent. Although it was up in the lane, they moved it from there down here. And so this is a nice place to come in the summertime to sit out if you can overcome the mosquitoes.
Shelbyville, the county seat of Shelby County. Shelby County population, 23,968. Area square miles, 385. Rank, 38. Shelby County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Dorothy McGinnis.
And what kind of work are you doing here?
Well, I'm a volunteer for the clerk to help with the older records in what they call the archives department of the county clerk's office. And we answer the inquiries that come in about people's ancestry, dating from 1792, when we became a county, the same time that Kentucky became a state. And we have our old records dating back to 1792, which is wonderful considering that so many courthouses have either burned or have lost a lot of their records, but ours have been preserved down through the years by people like Sue Carroll Prairie, who is our clerk, and take the interest in seeing that these records are kept and available to the people who want to see what has been preserved of our history. Of course, everything's based on history, I think.
You're right.
And if you do away with history, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And history will preserve your background, and it'll show the progression of the whole area. This was an agricultural area up until the middle of last century. And the families that came in here, one item I'd like to mention that people might not know is that in 1820s, middle 1820s, there were more people in this county than there have been up until the last census. And the families were large. It was an agricultural county. There wasn't enough land for everybody to make a living on. So they began to migrate to across the river to Indiana, and then from there to Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, various states. So you'll find the descendants of the early pioneers that were here all over the Midwest and the West. We get letters from all over the United States, even a few from back east, people that are still back there. And I've had correspondence from Alaska, Canada, and Puerto Rico. I believe that's all I can remember outside of the United States.
Okay, when the county was formed, how did it get its name?
From its first governor, Isaac Shelby was the first governor of Kentucky. And of course, Kentucky was formed from Virginia in 1792. And at that time, there were three major areas. And the south central part was called Lincoln County, and the eastern part was Fayette County, and the north central was Jefferson County. Shelby County was one of three cut off of Jefferson at the time the state was formed in 1792. So we thought of anything before that in this area was, of course, the people were here before that, will be recorded in Jefferson County in the courthouse there in Louisville. And of course, gradually all the counties were formed. We were the 15th state of the nation. And the counties were cut off of that gradually until we have now, 120 counties? Is that right?
That's right.
I'm not up to on the present history as much as I am the older history. And it was a pioneer time, and it was a rough time. The Boones were here, and they set up the Boone Station out here on the creek just north of town, but Indians still harassed them, and so they had to closed the station, and they moved the people from that station down into Jefferson County to the Beargrass station. But it didn't deter people from coming across the mountains or down the river from Pennsylvania. And that's where my ancestors came from. It's from Virginia and Pennsylvania. Sue, you want to add anything to
How
that?
about introducing yourself?
I'm Sue Carol Perry, and I'm the county clerk in Shelby County. And Dorothy, I'm just real fortunate to have her because, like she said, she's a volunteer, and most all of it has got to be in her head. I mean, you just heard her. I didn't know half of this stuff she just told us.
Okay. What do you want to know?
She takes care of all the current business, and you know what that is. It is really,
Right.
it just swallows you when you get in there, the paperwork and the computers and all of that. So I'd rather do what I'm doing than what she has to do.
Let me ask you about, maybe we can pull these two bits of information together. We're trying to help each county promote tourism, and also I understand that there's a particular facility here in the county. Could you tell us about that, as well as what people would like to come and see in the county as a tourist site?
We're very fortunate that we have a drawing card with the Wakefield Scarce Gallery that is located in the old Science Hill Girls School that was established in 1825 by the Tevis family, and then carried on by the Pointer family until 1936 when it was closed. It is a lovely gallery and has gorgeous antiques from all over, especially from England. And people come here when they have the Christmas showing every winter for in bus loads and car loads and so forth. So that adds a lot to the county's income and its publicity too. So we feel like that is one reason we want to preserve as much of the history of the county, because when they come, they say what a beautiful town this is, and they like the dogwoods that have been planted by former mayor, and they like the old buildings, and they like to see them preserved. And so we're trying to get people more interested in keeping the old buildings instead of tearing them down and putting up something modern that won't last nearly as long as these old buildings have lasted.
You know, Shelby County has always been really thought of as a farming county. I don't know if we still are, but at one time we were the biggest milk producing county. But in the last 10 or 12 years, we've had a lot of small factories to pop up. We have an industrial foundation, and we have an industrial park, and we've had several just recently. We've had the bud plant that's announced they were coming. Fortunately, Shelby County's never really had a low unemployment rate. So I think that this bud plant's not only going to help us, it's going to help Spencer and probably Henry and Anderson County, the counties surrounding us.
What can you tell us about the church across the street?
Well, the Methodist Church was one of the earliest churches in the county. The very first one was out in the country, of course, they're called Rockbridge Methodist Church. I believe that was one of the first ones, and there were several out in the country. But when they established this early in the last century, in the 1800s, it was in this general location. And the building that we have here now is one of the oldest church buildings that we have in town, along with possibly the Episcopal Church and the Catholic Church. And several years ago, they had a disastrous fire that gutted it practically the day after Christmas. But the Methodists and the townspeople and everybody were eager to keep the church here on this spot because of its historical value. So they were able to rebuild in the same church outer building. Now they have not yet gotten their steeple up, but they have everything else is on the outside is like it was at the time that it was finally completed. And it has been a very progressive church. It's a very warm, friendly, growing church in this community.
Versailles, the county seat of Woodford County. Woodford County population 18,706. Area square miles 192. Rank 107th. Woodford County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
We're in Versailles, Kentucky, or Versailles. The county seat is located here for Woodford County. Across the street we have the Woodford County Courthouse, and to my right we have a gentleman who has graciously volunteered to answer a few questions for us. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself and his role here in the county.
I'm Ron Wells, and I'm the curator of the Woodford County Historical Society.
Okay. Ron, what can you tell us about the history of the county? When was it formed?
The county was formed in 1798. We're coming up to our bicentennial, of course. And it was formed as one of the 9 original counties of Woodford County. At one time, Woodford County went all the way to the Ohio River. It took in about 11 counties that are now around. But at that time, it was all Woodford County all the way to the Ohio River.
Who was Woodford County named after?
The county was named for a Revolutionary War general, General Woodford.
What can you tell us about the courthouses?
The courthouse that's standing on the present site was built in the 1970s after a devastating fire of the old courthouse. There has always been a courthouse on Courthouse Square. The first one was built in 1790 by Jesse Grady, and it was built out of Buckeye logs at the cost of $22.50 to the county. The second courthouse, which also stood on the same square, was built out of stone. The need for the second courthouse was, of course, a larger facility. It was built by Henry Tompkins at a cost of $1,500 to the county. This served the county until 1813, when the third courthouse was erected. This one was erected out of brick and was 3 stories. It was incorporated in 1880 to the courthouse that preceded this one. That courthouse was very Victorian in its style, and not only did it take in the 1813 courthouse, but it also took in the 1794 courthouse. When it burnt, the reason why the records were saved was because they were stored in the old 1794 section of the courthouse, and because of the large stone walls, the fire did not get to the records. That's how come we have such good records here for genealogical purposes.
Are there any other historical landmarks that you know of in the county?
We have over 66 stone buildings in Woodford County. We're one of the few counties in the United States that has so many still being used for their original purposes. Just in Versailles, we have probably around 100-some historic homes and structures. The Historical Society is in a church building that was erected in 1819 and served as one of the first Christian churches, or the Campbellite churches, in Kentucky. We have many internationally known horse farms in Woodford County. We are developing a tourism industry. We do have small, clean, light industries, though, in the county.
With tourism, what is there for people to do coming through here? I mean, because we're trying to promote tourism for each county as well.
Well, with the number of internationally known horse farms, it is a way of showing the general public how this way of life is actually all about, and how the horses are raised, and how a real horse farm operates. Also, with the number of our historic landmarks here in Woodford County, it gives the tourist an idea of what colonial Kentucky was all about. This is the first courthouse, built in 1790, and this is the one that was built out of Buckeye logs. This is the stone courthouse, which was the second courthouse, built in 1794. This courthouse was the reconstruction of the 1880 courthouse. The original courthouse was the 1813 courthouse, and they built onto the front of it in a Victorian style. This courthouse is the same view, but from the side. The lower shots I can't hold it. The lower shots here are of the courthouse with the relationship to the rest of the block. At one time we had an Odd Fellows Hall built on Courthouse Square. Here we have a general view of downtown Versailles with the courthouse showing predominantly over the buildings.
This gentleman is the Woodford County Sheriff, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself.
Lauren Carl, C-A-R-L is my last name.
What was the name I heard inside?
My nickname's Squirrel.
Okay. What can you tell? One of the things we're asking elected officials is why they get into public office. Why do they want to be a public servant? Why did you want to be a sheriff?
Well, that's a very good question and a hard one sometimes to answer. Really, I serve the people and like to serve the people and meet people each day. And in the sheriff's business, I was a policeman before that and a deputy sheriff. The challenge of something being different each day, no matter not knowing each day what it's going to be and something different. And I get a feeling of accomplishment, even though we don't get a lot of thank yous in our job. I get a feeling of accomplishment when we solve something or return somebody's stolen property or help somebody that's had a catastrophe or been raped or whatever it might be. So I really get a sense of self-satisfaction by helping the people and being there if they need me. I'm in the JCs, and we have a party each year for the underprivileged children. And Woodford County is very fortunate in the respect that we have the lowest unemployment in the state of Kentucky, and that is good. The only thing that I would like to see or possibly change is help the indigent more, the poor people, the people that are having a tough time, that either don't have the education or don't have the qualifications to get a job. And if we could give them more help to get the jobs, not so much to help them, you know, not them help themselves, but the fact that we could let them train them or put them in a technical type of skill where they could go to work and show them what to do and let them learn from there.
For 50 years I've been telling jokes on Mama Chandler, and she said her special love to you and each one of you. We've been married 63 years, and I keep saying that's a great tribute to my patient. I heard on a certain occasion she'd been outspoken, and I wanted to know by whom. And then as I traveled about the state police, Swapper and all the rest of them called her Mama Chandler. And she adorned the place for 8 years. And I said, well, I haven't spoken to her for 2 weeks. And what's the matter? I said, I hadn't wanted to interrupt her. All of us owe an obligation to make a maximum contribution to our time and generation. We ought to try that. And as we go forward together, trying as best we can to make a maximum contribution to our time and generation, may the Spirit of God be with us all. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Kentucky have both said that the first time Governor Chandler spoke here at the Fancy Farm Picnic was 1931 when he ran for Lieutenant Governor of Kentucky. We're so glad you're here. God bless you, Governor Chandler, and we're looking forward to seeing you next year.
And we've talked today about education and about jobs, and I want very specifically and very quickly to tell you that there's nothing more important in this Commonwealth than saving the family farm. There's nothing more important than working with the farm economy. And there are thousands and thousands of jobs that are in jeopardy here today. And I want you to know that Butch Burnett is so qualified and so dedicated to working on that issue. And Wallace Wilkinson is qualified and dedicated to working on on that issue, and we're going to work together. And make no mistake about it, there is going to be no way to outwork or outperform this team. And together, as a team, we're going to make the right things happen, and we're going to solve the problems, and all of us together are going to do the things that need to be done. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
One of the other places where we've talked a great deal about natural beauty in Kentucky, obviously Kentucky is a rare place for various types of architecture in the 19th century. And I think one of the most beautiful examples of 19th century architecture is found at Pleasant Hill, Kentucky, with the restoration of the very, very marvelous Shaker village that was there and now has been restored. They have restored 3 huge family houses. The Shakers came into Kentucky in the early 19th century, and there were 2 in Kentucky. There was one further south, but the one at Pleasant Hill was by far the biggest. It's one of the most marvelous restorations I've seen. If you go there, you now can stay in the various family houses. They are now, of course, all modern inside as far as the accommodation is concerned. The food is absolutely sensational. And although the man his name escapes me right now, they had a genius there of an architect who designed most of these buildings. And if you go into the trustee's house, for instance, there's a double stairway that goes right on up. Of course, the men were on one side of the building and the women were on the other. And therefore, they had separate stairways in all the buildings and kept them there. But the trustee house, they have 3 stories of stairs going right on up all the way to the top with the most beautiful cherry banister you probably will ever see. The workmanship is absolutely phenomenal. And I would suggest that anybody who wanted to see a part of the beauty of 19th century America and the maybe odd but really very talented people the Shakers were, there's no better place to learn about it than Pleasant Hill, Kentucky, and it isn't all that far, of course, from Lexington.
I would like to thank the many people who helped make these historic tapes possible. Historians, elected officials, businesses, Store Cable with their equipment, the many other studios across the state, local newspapers, daily newspapers that helped us in this effort. In particular, Miss June GEIMAN, who traveled some 42,000 miles across the Commonwealth of Kentucky with me, filming these historic tapes. Now we'd like for you to enjoy the history of Kentucky, county by county, as we enjoyed making the history come true for you. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay. Its far north gate and southern trails came Walker Boone and Kenton too. Kentucky, she is calling, a place of history. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay.
your time, old mule. I know you're growing lame, but we'll pasture in the stars when we strike that flame. And we'll sit up there and watch the world go by when we find that long-lost gold mine in the sky.
Happy days are here again, they're Chandler days, so cheer again. He's a man for each Kentuckian. Happy days are here again.
Albert Benjamin Happy Chandler grew up poor on a small Kentucky farm. He went on to become governor, senator, commissioner of baseball, and a Democratic candidate for president. For half a century, Happy Chandler was America's preeminent Southern politician.
In 1982, I was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. They said I was iron-willed and honest. What's wrong with that? I didn't say that. They said that.
Happy days are here again.
I said that if I had to give up all the important offices that I've held during my lifetime and I was told I couldn't keep but one, I'd be the governor of Kentucky. If everybody knew what I know about, they all want to live in Kentucky, and then we wouldn't have room for them, you understand? Ah, Lordy. Home ground. Where they said there's a lot of nice people and a few disgruntled soreheads. I'll never forget that either. How do you do, Your Royal Highness? How are you?
Good to see you.
I'm delighted to see you. So this is like being on home ground
That's
again.
right. That's
Good
right.
luck
So
to
you know your way around.
Yes, ma'am. I think so.
Welcome to the Capitol.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Good luck.
60 years ago, Happy made his first trip to this building. He was a small-town lawyer elected to the Kentucky State Senate. The new kid impressed the politicians in the State House. He looked like a winner.
We didn't use the word glamour so much in those days, but he had it. There was a kind of new look about him, which is very attractive in politics. He was a new face. He was one that obviously had a lot going for him.
Happy quickly graduated from the state senate. In the next election, he was lieutenant governor. The party bosses predicted a bright future if he towed the line. Happy had ideas of his own.
A very audacious move that he made once when he caught the governor, Governor Ruby LaFoon, out of the state. LaFoon had gone up to Washington to confer with Democratic leaders there, and as soon as he crossed the state line, Happy became acting governor, became governor of the state under the state law, and he immediately issued a call for a special session to enact a primary law, and the special session met, the primary law was enacted and went into effect.
Happy's primary law deflated the powerful political machine. The bosses lost their smoke-filled convention. The people gained a free and open primary election. And across the state, Happy was lauded as the people's champion.
He loves to quote from Shakespeare in explaining his decision to run for governor following the enactment of the primary law, and that, of course, the famous quotation, "There's a tide."
There's a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune, you know.
Urged on by hundreds of letters, Happy entered the governor's race. He bypassed the cities and courthouses and took his campaign to the people. He drove to every pig-picking barbecue and square dance in the state. Happy spoke the language of the people. He often finished a fiery speech with a rousing rendition of My Old Kentucky Home.
We went to hear him speak, and afterward he sang, and I just thought he was a fascinating man. His personality, everything. he really, and he was a very handsome man when he was young.
He had a good voice, too.
Oh.
He could really sing.
In 1935, the people gave Happy a narrow victory over the machine's candidate. He was sworn in as America's youngest governor. Happy ran on a reform platform, and he didn't let the people down. He built roads, schools, and hospitals. He cleaned house in the Capitol and saved $17 million. That was a lot of money in those days.
My father told me when I was growing up, if I spent more than I took in, I'd go broke. And I believed him, you understand?
No one was more surprised at Happy's success than his father. Joe Chandler was a poor but honest tobacco farmer. Happy's mother deserted the family when Chandler was 4 years old.
I was born on a small farm 1 mile north of Cardin, Kentucky, C-O-R-Y-D-O-N. I was born on the Diamond Island Road on Bastille Day in 1898. The house of Chandler Barn, it wasn't no rich man's house. Poor as I was, he ain't at anybody's house. Did you ever hear him make a talk while he was running for governor? He'd tell him he ate it at anybody's house. Anybody. I carried the papers. I was the paper boy. I carried the Sporting News around the streets of Cardin in 1909. And between the times I was waiting for the train to bring my papers, I was catching fly balls and Mr. Bob was hitting them for me. Boy, played over across the railroad track. I played baseball every waking hour, you know. Yeah, this is an old baseball diamond. Used to be a barn sit back there. When I was a boy, they called me Ty Cobb Chandler. And they asked me, could you hit? I said, they didn't name me boys for Ty Cobb couldn't hit. Well, one time we was playing ball, we chewed up that his father to Empire. We come out here and his father called a bad decision, he thought. We never played no more ball. I got all the rest of the evening. He just hated to lose that bad. He didn't want to lose. Yeah.
I didn't play baseball with him, but I might have been run over if I had gotten in his way. And I can remember Mother saying, Happy, don't play so hard with the children. They're just children. And he would say, well, they can't learn any younger. You've got to get out of the way, or you've got to throw the ball, or whatever. And it was his idea that you just start out right away, teaching people that nobody's going to make it easy for you.
Happy relied on his own resources when he enrolled in prestigious Transylvania University in 1917.
He did not go on scholarships. He worked his way through. As he put it, he appeared on that campus with a red sweater, a smile, and a $5 bill.
Nicknames are something that the kids give you. And I say if they'd called me Stinky, I'd have been stuck with it, you know. And in about 17 or 18 on the campus of Transylvania, there's a kid from Lawrenceburg named Hawkins. Called out across the campus and said, there goes Happy Chandler. I was probably singing or making some sort of noise, you know. I was full of vinegar. And so he called me Happy Chandler, and it stuck.
In 1929, Happy met a pretty school teacher from Virginia. Mildred Watkins was already engaged. Happy soon beat the other fellow out.
No one's marriage is all good time, but the most of it, and the parts that weren't too hot, we met them together. I've heard some of them say they had so much more fun before they were married. Well, you just don't get married for fun and games. It depends on your attitude towards marriage. And I think Happy and I both had the training back of us that when you're married, my mother always taught me you pull in the double harness. And if one of them slacks up, that's throwing a whole lot more too much on the other side. You pull and double harness.
Pull your own weight, you know.
Dad and Mother met in a production of Little Women. And Dad was the German professor, and Mother was Amy. So right there it tells you that they were headed for show business. They detoured into other endeavors.
At a mass rally in Bowling Green, I shook hands with 25,000 people one afternoon, and it was a hot summer day, and I had a white suit on. Water was running in my shoes.
That's right.
And my hand was swollen twice as big from shaking hands. And I had Waterfield with me, who was running for lieutenant governor. He gave out about halfway and retreated, you know.
So did I.
But I stayed.
I was down there in the line, but I quit too.
No,
But he
I
stayed
only-
there long as there was anybody.
I used to speak 35, 40 minutes and then shake hands for 2 hours.
I can remember Dad speaking with such fire and with such conviction. The people that were listening to him felt that there was nothing that he couldn't do for them, that he was going to get them electricity. A lot of them didn't have electricity. He was going to take the sales tax off their food and their medicine, and he said it in ways that just brought people up out of their seats, you know, and he's just one of the very few leaders in the world, and there have been a few, that can elicit that response from people. Very emotional. He deals in emotion. And I've always been a trifle embarrassed by emotion.
We're strong, we're capable, and we shall move forward in the conviction that the things for which we stand are right, and with God's help, we'll lead this great party of ours to victory in November. Thank you, and God bless you.
He had a wonderful personal touch, which everybody knows about. He called so many people in the audience by their name, you know, and he remembered everybody he'd ever met, as far as I can see. That memory was a remarkable asset politically to Happy, and he cultivated it.
He got up to make his talk, and he said about 5 words. He said, "There's my friend back there, Brown." And he got 5 boys in service. I did have 5 boys in service, and all 5 was in service.
Campaigning, he ran into people in the mountains that he had talked to the year before, and he remembered what they were talking about. It had something sometime to do with a sow and pig. Yeah. But he remembered whatever it was that they had talked about before, which astounded them, but made them think, you know, that he had put them down in his mind as a special person.
The fellow says, "Are you going to vote for him?" I said, "Hell, yes, he remembered me. He called my name." He recognized me. Not only that, he kissed me. The first white man ever did kiss me. I was surprised, you know.
By 1938, Happy's term as governor was coming to an end, and he began to look around for something else to do. He decided to run for the Senate. There was a problem. The seat was occupied by Alben Barkley, Senate Majority Leader, future Vice President, and FDR's right-hand man. Happy was in for a tough contest.
Leave him where he is and leave me where I am as United States Senator.
He was scared. Mr. Roosevelt came down here and made 5 speeches in his behalf in one day.
Everybody at that time was courting FDR's support. His popularity was very high, and there was the rivalry from any candidate who was running to get the endorsement of FDR.
Time magazine and the national media generally accused Happy of jumping in and wedging himself in between the president and Senator Barkley.
Happy got himself in there, all right. I guess Happy saw a chance there at least to get pictured with FDR. He was always quick on his feet.
Happy ran head-on against the National Democratic Party and lost to Barkley in the primary. It was Happy's first defeat and potentially a major setback.
Every now and then, you dig a dry hole. Everybody does, no matter what they go. And some of them stay around and cry, you know, and sit down and moan, and that won't do it. That won't make up for it. You got to move your digger and dig someplace else, you know.
7 months later, the junior senator from Kentucky died. Happy was appointed to fill the vacancy and went off to Washington to examine the larger world picture.
The last time we were in Jerusalem, Ben Gurion gave me this Bible, and they go from back to front, you know that. I got a great picture there of Mahatma Gandhi in India. We were in India during the war. That's his signature on his breeches there, you know. One of the 5 senators designated by the Senate to visit the world battlefront. They're all dead now but me. I was with MacArthur in New Guinea. I had an opportunity to see the character and conduct of American boys in action all over the world.
In 1945, the war was winding to a close. Happy distinguished himself with his far-sighted work for international harmony. Around this time, he was offered a new job. Happy hated to leave the Senate, but the baseball owners offered what he considered the best job in America and a substantial pay raise.
Crackerjack here. Crackerjack.
Wheeler was offered the commissionership because as a senator he supported baseball during the war. Happy's predecessor had been dignified and aloof. Happy was open, accessible, and affable. He loved going to games and mixing with players and fans. Happy's era was marked by post-war growing pains. GIs were returning, players were threatening to strike, the Mexican League was siphoning players, and there was the controversial issue of mixing the all-white boys of summer with black players.
My predecessor was Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and he wouldn't let them play. If they were black, they were automatically disqualified. He died in 1944, and just before he died, they asked him again about it, and his answer was, everything's been said about this that's going to be said. The answer is no.
In 1946, in a secret meeting, the owners voted 13-1 against mixing the color lines. Happy counted the ballots. The only vote for integration came from Branch Rickey of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Rickey wanted to bring Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers. The owners opposed the idea. If Jackie was to play, Rickey needed the approval and support of the commissioner.
So Rickey called me on the telephone as soon as I got home and said, I've got to see you. And I said, all right, come on. Came down here. I told him, I said, I've thought about this thing many times. I was on the Senate Military Affairs Committee all during the Second World War and had opportunity to observe the character and conduct of American soldiers all over the world. I saw black men and white men and red men and yellow men and all kinds of colors. I wasn't present when the Lord gave out the colors, and I don't know why, but that's the way it is. They're colored. And they were offered to fight and die for the freedom of mankind. And I just can't believe that when a fellow offers his life for the freedom of mankind, when he comes back home, he's told he can't play the national pastime, national sport. And I said, I think this thing ought to be ended. And you bring him in, and I'll approve of the transfer of his contract from Montreal to Brooklyn, and we'll make the fight. The umpires hated him, and he didn't help himself some. He had a chip on his shoulder, and you can't blame him for that because he thought everybody was against him, and nearly everybody was. Dixie Walker told me, for example, that he wasn't going to play with him. Ben Chapman, another Alabama boy, said, wait till he comes to Philadelphia, I'll make trouble for him. And I sent him a telegram. I said, if you make trouble for him, I'll make trouble for you.
Jackie endured untold humiliation as he opened the door for other blacks. Player by player, the top black athletes were signed by teams trying to stay competitive. When blacks and whites played together in America's pastime, this was a major crack in the wall of segregation. It advanced civil rights significantly in America. Happy went against the wishes of most owners, players, and fans in signing Jackie's contract. It was a decision a weaker commissioner may have delayed.
It was decision time, and somebody had to make it. I was the only fellow on earth that could.
Any notions the owners may have held that Happy was a smiling, malleable figurehead soon evaporated. Happy was driven by his love for baseball. He worked hard to make it the sport he imagined it to be as a boy. He barred players from racetracks and suspended street tough Leo DeRocher for running with the wrong crowd. He set up a pension fund to protect aging players, and when he found Babe Ruth alcoholic and penniless, he gave the Babe a day in the sun again at Yankee Stadium. The fans cheered Ruth, but booed Happy. Fans were angry over his suspension of DeRocher. Happy was never fully appreciated by the East Coast city slickers.
People in the Northeast said, gee, why is that person so happy? Why is he so pleasant? Why is he talking so long and being so friendly? There is that sort of Northeast suspicion of that, maybe for good and for bad. And he probably rubbed people the wrong way.
I first met Happy in 1951 at the Broadway Central Hotel in New York City. We were celebrating the 75th anniversary, I guess, of the National League. And Happy was in his last months as commissioner. And I went to the party and I met him, and I was enchanted by him. I really was enchanted by him. I was enchanted by his charm, his good humor, he was fun to be with. I thought it then, and I haven't changed my thinking about Happy in the 35 ensuing years. But I didn't see him again for 18 years. By that time, I was commissioner. Happy had gone back to Kentucky, become governor again. had been forgotten by baseball. I think he resented that. I know he resented it.
That's my friend Bowie Kuhn, who was 4th commissioner of baseball, and a very good one indeed. And I think didn't have any better commissioner in his lifetime than Bowie Kuhn. And of course, he got shabby treatment from the owners, but that's what else is new. They don't give everybody shabby treatment. They don't know everybody, but everybody they do know, they give shabby treatment.
He really thought he had become a leper in baseball, that they had put him aside. And he thought he'd been good for baseball, and I think he was good for baseball. And I think he belonged in the Hall of Fame, but he was worried that other fates were at work. And they weren't. Justice was finally done. Happy was put in the Hall of Fame, and he came to Cooperstown. And I'll never forget how thrilled he was to be there, and what a good old daddy he was up there in Cooperstown.
In the spring of '51, Happy's commissionership ended. He was 3 votes shy of having his contract renewed by the owners. Happy put his commissioner's office in Cincinnati so he could look across the river to what he called the Promised Land. Now he would return for good.
Do you think he was disappointed when he was asked to leave?
There's no doubt that he was disappointed when he was asked to leave. I think it came to him at least as a mild shock, if not a major shock.
We will sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home, far away.
Welcome home, Happy. A crowd estimated at between 4,500 and 5,000 has gathered to hear the closing campaign address of A.B. Happy Chandler, candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor of Kentucky.
Sometimes in politics the game gets a little rough, but I've always insisted if you can't stand the gas, you ought to get out of the game.
Here they are, all here to see the man who pulled the greatest political upset in modern times, Happy Chandler.
In 1955, Happy was back in the governor's mansion. School desegregation was the issue of the day. Across the South, governors were forced to choose sides.
One day at Clay, the mayor of Clay called me on the telephone and said, that's my country, that's where I was born. Albert, he said, there ain't no nigger going to school here. And I said to him, Herman, you own that town, and I don't know whether they are or not, but if they show up, they're going. So one day, 2 little black kids had the whole school. All the kids left and the teachers left, but the little black kids were in school. That was my job. It was the law. At the same time, Wallace was standing at the front door in Alabama. Faubus was telling them they couldn't go to school in Arkansas. And we handled that about, I think the record will show, we handled the integration of schools with about as little trouble. Nobody was killed. And with about as little trouble as any state handled it in the United States. And I'm not running for anything. I'm just reciting to you now what happened, you understand? I'm not running from anything either, but...
Governor, it's a pleasure to have a candidate for the presidency on our program this afternoon, but I'm curious to know just how serious are your intentions, sir?
Once I set my hand to the plow, I keep plowing until I get to the end of the furrow and then turn a furrow.
In '56, Happy made a run for the White House. He went off to the Democratic Convention in Chicago, where he received votes in 8 states on the first ballot. The party passed over the old handshaking stump speaker and gave the nod to urbane Adlai Stephenson. Happy gave it another try in '60. Near the end of his career, he found the competition getting younger and younger.
Satchel Paige said it best of all. He said, don't look back, they may be gaining on you. And I always knew that the youngsters would come along. Everybody knows that. If they don't, they're dumb, you know. And I knew there were fellows who wanted my job. I had some good jobs, you know. And there's always somebody that wants your job, especially if it's a good one. That never dismayed me or never bothered me. It didn't interfere with I just tried to keep ahead of them, you understand. And the record will show that I did it fairly well for a number of years.
unquestionably the style of appeal had changed. Chandler's greatest appeal was when he was in the flesh and had a great audience around him and could appeal to that audience directly. He had a monumental memory. He was able to ask them about their grandparents and make other personal comments that just made him unbeatable on the stump.
Over the years, Happy made several unsuccessful attempts to regain the governorship. His last race was in 1971. George Vesey covered the campaign.
And I think he knew he didn't have a chance to win, but of course he did it bravely. He went around in a van, one of these mobile vans with My Old Kentucky Home blaring from the loudspeaker and bells ringing. It was sort of a chance for him to go around the countryside as a last hurrah and say goodbye to his people. Well, I remember going to this little, it may have even been originally a bootlegger's paradise. Now it was like a little bar and grill out in the middle of nowhere, out in the back of Bourbon County or somewhere. And this little old black lady, must have been about 80 years old, came out of this place, and I don't know if she'd been primed to be there or what, but she like suddenly materialized, and in this great, beautiful voice of hers, she said, "Oh, Governor Chandler, it's so nice to see you again. You were always so good to me." And he said, "Well, Mary, I know you voted for me every time, and you were always here for me, Mary." And it was a great feeling that the two of them had, that they understood each other. They'd been through all these times. I mean, he went back to a time of, they both went back to a time of segregation, and people were generally affectionate of him. I mean, whether they thought he could win or not, they were thanking him for what he had meant to the Commonwealth so many years before.
Hey, if anything sweeter than a baby girl, he didn't send it here. Send it someplace else. I'm all but stout for baby girl.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
Nice to meet you. Oh, very nice. Thank you.
Do you remember L.B. Barton? Do you remember L.B. Barton?
Nicholas County.
Yeah, I'm his daughter.
Oh, my Lord, he was one of my most beloved friends.
He thought a lot of you.
Nicholas County. Well, he was salt of the earth.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad to see you. Partner, take care. I'm the only governor that's been elected in anybody's lifetime that went home after he got through. All the rest of them went someplace else. Oh, hell, I came back here. That's where I came from.
I'd like to thank the many people who helped make these historic tapes possible. Historians, elected officials, businesses, Store Cable with their equipment, the many other studios across the state, local newspapers, daily newspapers that helped us in this effort. In particular, Miss June GEIMAN, who traveled some 42,000 miles across the Commonwealth of Kentucky with me, filming these historic tapes. Now we'd like for you to enjoy the history of Kentucky, county by county, as we enjoyed making the history come true for you. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay. Its far north gate and southern trails came Walker, Boone, and Kenton too. Kentucky, she is calling, a place of history. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay.